I made a mistake that almost every first-time founder makes. I built features that nobody actually wanted. Not because they were bad, not because they didn't work. They worked fine actually. And to be honest, I was proud of some of them. It was because I was building off assumptions and not feedback. When I first started building Zenvoy, I thought the hardest part would be building the product itself. The code, the AI, the booking links, implementing the map, all of the technical stuff. But what I've actually learned is that often that's the easiest part. The hardest part is figuring out what should be built in the first place. And that's what this episode's about. If you're new here, I'm Ali, I'm 20 years old, and I'm building a travel startup called Zenvoy. I'm funding the whole thing by working as a landscaper during the day. This channel isn't business advice. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've cracked some secret business code, because I haven't. I haven't launched yet, and I don't have it completely figured out. What I am doing though, is I'm documenting the actual process. The mistakes, the lessons learned, the stuff that doesn't make it into the polished founders content you see online. In the last episode, I talked about why travel planning still feels broken, even with all the technology we have access to now. Today, I wanted to talk about what happened after I actually started building a solution to that problem. Because solving a problem and solving the right problem are two completely different things. And I learned that the hard way. Here's something I noticed about myself. And I think this is also true for most first-time founders. You spend a lot of time in your own head. You think about your idea, you think about features, you think about improvements, and you think about the possibilities of what your business could potentially become. And the longer you sit with an idea, the more convinced you become that that's the one that people want. The problem is that most of these conversations that you're having with yourself, not with users and not with people who are actually going to be using the product you deliver. When I started building Zenvoy, I had so many ideas. I had pages in my notes app. I have voice memos of when I was driving to work. I was trying to create features that I thought would make my app feel more complete, feel finished, feel like a real app, instead of something I was mashing together after work. And to be completely honest, some of these features that I introduced were purely because I thought they were cool, not because a single person had asked for them, not because I had any evidence that they actually mattered, just because building them felt exciting. This is a trap I feel like most founders get caught up in, and it's one that's just not really talked about enough. We get attached to our own ideas. We start to believe that more features automatically means more value. A more complete looking product is a better product. But here's the thing, users don't care how many features you have. They don't open an app and think, wow, look at all of these options. They open an app because they have a problem that needs to be solved. They want to know as fast as possible when they open your app if it's going to solve the problem they have. More features does not mean more value. Sometimes it means the complete opposite. Sometimes it just means that there's more things getting in the way for your customer and what they want to achieve. This kind of friction is what determines whether a customer stays or leaves. I had to learn this the slow way, building features that nobody used. When I first started thinking about travel planning, my first instinct was to add more. It started off with just the AI itself. And then I added more recommendations, more options, more AI, more functionality, stacked on top of more functionality. Because that's basically the playbook that most software follows. If a product isn't working, add a feature. If engagement is low, just add another feature. If users aren't converting, add another feature. It's almost a default response in tech. So that's exactly what I did early on. I looked at the travel planning process and thought to myself, what's missing from here? What information do people not have access to? But the more time I spent looking at how people planned for travel, really looked, not assuming, the more I realized the diagnosis was completely backwards. Travelers aren't struggling because there's a lack of information. They're drowning in information. Think about how you actually planned your last trip. You watched so many videos, you took so many notes, you had so many ideas of what your trip could have potentially been. All this information is just sitting there, competing for your attention, competing with each other, none of it organized, none of it really specifically personalized to you. This was the problem that I realized I actually had to solve. This was the problem that I had to build for. The problem was the friction between inspiration and execution. It wasn't give people more, it was take this mess and turn it into something usable. This was a different problem entirely, and it meant that a lot of my original features were made redundant. They just weren't useful. Here's the part that actually surprised me the most. It wasn't what people liked, it was what people completely ignored. There were things that I spent days on and the better part of a week on. After a 12-hour day of landscaping, I'd be thinking about all these ideas and designs and what I could implement that would be completely game-changing. Things that I thought when people opened the app, they'd notice immediately. And when I put them in front of people, the reaction was, oh, that's cool, I guess. And then they'd move on, completely unbothered. And the time I spent on these little things wasted. Meanwhile, the things that people actually cared about were embarrassingly simple. Can this save me time? Can this reduce the stress of planning? Can this stop me from having multiple tabs and 3 apps open? Nobody buys features. They buy outcomes. Nobody actually wants a drill. They want a hole in the wall. They don't care how many torque settings it has or what the battery life of it is. They care that there's a hole in the wall. In my case, nobody wants a travel planning platform. They want a great trip with as little stress as possible getting there. Once I had actually internalized that, not just understood it as a concept, I let it change how I made decisions. I stopped asking, is this feature impressive? And started asking, does this get someone closer to a trip they're excited about with less effort? A lot of stuff I was proud of did not survive that question. Nobody tells you this when you start building products, but sometimes progress comes from removing things, not adding. I think when you're new to this, you assume that success comes from addition. More features, more complexity, more options for the user to customize their experience. But more and more, I found the opposite is true. Every feature adds friction. Every button is another decision that the user has to make. When you're planning a trip, you're already mentally tired from comparing, from choosing. The last thing they need is your app adding more decisions to that pile. So somewhere along the way, I changed from what features can I add to what features can I take away? What can be simplified? What can happen behind the scenes automatically that reduces the friction? What can be streamlined? This was really uncomfortable at first. As a founder, it feels counterintuitive to be taking stuff away from your product. It feels like you're doing less. But what I realized is that travelers don't care about all the fancy technology working behind the scenes. They care how easy it feels. That's it. That's the entire experience for them. So my actual work over the past few months has been, what can I do to make this experience as easy for my user as possible? And suddenly the product just feels better. If there's one thing that I want you to take away from this, it's that building a product isn't really about the technology. The tech is the easy part, well, relatively speaking. It's about understanding people. The better you understand the problem that your user is having, the better your solution naturally becomes. You stop guessing and you start responding to something real. And right now, that's exactly where my focus is. Talking to travelers, reading feedback closely instead of skimming it, testing my own assumptions instead of trusting them by default, and trying to build something that people genuinely find useful, not just something that looks impressive in a demo. As always, I'd love to hear from you on this one. What's a feature that you've used in an app that looked impressive on the surface, but didn't actually make your life any easier? And if you're someone who travels regularly, what's one thing you wish travel tools actually did better? Thanks for following along on this journey with me. I really appreciate you, and I hopefully will see you in the next one. See ya.